Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the seminar. Next speaker, a member since 1987, who's still contributing to the association, pioneer of startups in Italy, and is involved in small and medium-sized enterprise, as well as startups in the aerospace sector. Thank Flavio for being with us tonight, and I give you the floor for your presentation.
Hi, everybody. My name is Flavio, and I want to take this occasion to thanks all of you. I've been asked to propose a topic for you guys, and because I work with startups 2009, I thought it could be of interest to have a few ideas illustrated this evening. A few information about myself. I born in 1967. At the time, there was the space era. Everybody was thinking of the future in this way. Where I really rise is more similar to this, a little village in the north of Italy. This is much more close to what was my reality when I was young. And then I went to the university in Milan, and I joined EUROAVIA. I joined EUROAVIA second year of university, was back in 1987. I was extremely excited first sight. EUROAVIA at that time was under a reconstruction after a few years that was dormant, and I jumped on it, and I started to travel Europe all over with the trains, with the airplanes, with cars. And were fantastic years. I don't think you can imagine. Germany was divided in two, and my first travel abroad for EUROAVIA was in Berlin in 1990. A few months after the wall fall down, we decided to make our first EMEAC in Berlin to celebrate the fall of the Berlin Wall. For me, it was first event. Then I took part to other events, like the first satellite design at the European Space Agency in 1992. In 1993, I took my degree in aeronautical engineering in Milan. And a few years later, finally, I took my pilot license. And I continued to stay in touch with EUROAVIans all over, thinking that it was much important to build a follow-up after the students' years. We did it. We built an alumni association. This is our participation to the EUROAVIA Lustrum in Stuttgart in 2014 with a bunch of guys. So I'm still an EUROAVIan, and I hope that all of you will be ready to join the EUROAVIA Alumni Association after their graduation. Today, I take these few minutes to talk about startups. I thought this could be a topic of interest for you, given the fact that you are young, you are engineers, and full of new ideas and enthusiasm. Let's start with a brief introduction to startupping and innovation from an engineering point of view. First things that I want to talk about is about innovation. Innovation is quite a recent concept. In the antiquity, innovation was really not what we meant today. It was more something like novelty, something that comes from outside the border of your city. And later on, was more about inventing, so discovering something. Only recently, we have something that we call innovation, so something that we spend time and money to build and to bring on the market. Yes, because one of the key concepts that I want to transfer today to you is that innovation is something that has to bring, yes, a change, yes, a rupture with the past. For sure, it's something creative where you combine different elements and you come up with a value and possible utility for your community. But what really makes it an innovation is when this utility, this value is adopted by a client and the client rewards your effort to build this innovation. So the first message I want to give you this evening is you innovate when you sell. This, I think, is a concept that I was a young engineer was not clear. When I was a young engineer, a student, we thought that being innovative was doing great technological things. It's not that. You innovate when these great technological things brings value and you are rewarded for that. So selling is an essential part of innovation. First message. Then let's talk a bit about how companies deal with innovation. The first concept I want to give you is that whenever a company starts technological trajectory, providing a performance, some kind of value, some kind of performance, speed, km/h, RPM. In a company, there is a path of continuous innovation, a continuous effort to improve the performance of your product or your service. And this leads to specialization in the way this company is built and operates. So this specialization brings a curious fact, rejects all the ideas, all the novelty, all the approaches that are not consistent with the technological path that the company has chosen. There are a lot of rejected ideas. And this evening, I want to show you what happened with a couple of ideas in the past. The first is what happened with Apple, one, if not the most valued brand in the world, renewed for imagination, renewed for innovation. But actually, Steve Wozniak is the guy, the technical guy, the engineer behind Steve Jobs. He proposed his idea in a Hewlett-Packard that was his employer, but those ideas were rejected. Steve Jobs, the selling guy, took this chance and he built Apple. Another company behaved differently. They still rejected the idea, but they initiate a new business. It's the case of Raytheon. All of you are aeronautical engineers, so you know that Raytheon is one of the most important defense industry in USA. And when one of his engineers, Percy Spencer, was experimenting with microwave for capturing missile trajectories, he, at a certain point, he discovered that a microwave was able to melt chocolate in his pocket. And this prompted him to propose his bosses to use this discovery to create something to cook food. Well, differently than HP, Boss built around this idea a new product, the microwave oven. And today, microwave ovens are all over the world. But they saw their first steps into defense industry. So two very different approaches. When you have a good idea, you are in this matrix. You can have a new product and you bring it on an old market. So you try to serve old clients with a new product. Or you bring your existing products to new clients in a new market. Both of these moves have risk, rewards. For sure, they have lower risk than the last option, that is bringing a new product in a new market. This is the most difficult things at all. This is the job of a startup. A startup is someone that has an idea for a client that does not exist. A startup is someone that has not a product and not a market. It's a very difficult task. And it's totally different than what is normally done. What is normally done in a company is this. It's continuous innovation. You get the requirements from the client, produce a design, start to implement, make your trials, and then you sell it, and you have the maintenance. This is waterfall model. You will hear a lot about waterfall model, or you have already heard about it. This model works well in the first two cases, B and C. It doesn't work at all in the last case. When you bring innovation to new markets, you have to follow something different. And it's called startupping, lean startup. Today is quite coded. It's a line of thinking that started not much time ago. The book itself, Lean Startupping, is back in 2008, if I remember well. It is complementary to other books about this subject that are Blue Ocean Strategy and Discovery Planning. This approach is different than the one before, this one, because it's much more scientific. Actually, it's based on a round of hypothesis testing and pivoting. So you make your hypothesis, you design an experiment, make the test, get an insight, and again, until your hypotheses are validated and you find the right way to bring a new product to a new client. This approach is probably something that whoever of you has done physics exam knows very well. It's based on testing two fundamental hypotheses. The first is testing the problem. So the first question that you try to understand is there a customer and this customer has a problem that he wants to solve? And if so, you test the solution. So you try to figure out which is the best solution and verify. You build a set of tests or trials to understand this solution makes the job. So actually, this is exactly what Galileo Galilei teaches us. You make an observation, you make an hypothesis, you make your forecast, expect the results, you build an experiment, you test, pivot, or proceed. So what is nice about lean startupping is that this new methodology is capable to bring a lot of scientific approach into building a business. And actually, it's not strange because lean startupping was born in San Francisco and was born from the struggle of thousands of information technology engineers that were ill-equipped to build businesses, but they were at the forefront of innovation. They were forced to find a way to build a business, and they did exactly what engineering university told them for all the years at the university. They used the scientific methodology. So the second message for this evening is engineers do it better. If you want to do a startup, do it with an engineer. Then you can follow a path. Find the customer, find the job to be done, uncover the customer need, discover unmet need, find segments, size the market, conduct competitive analysis, formulate an innovation strategy, a pricing strategy, define a solution, evaluate the solution, position the solution, and sell. Oh, this is a lot, I understand. But the scope of this slide is not teach you about the innovation process, is to show you that the first tool that you can use is the business model canvas. I have slightly modified the business model canvas, the original one, in order to make a bit more rational, a bit more engineering style. This tool show you the 9 pieces of a business. So if you want to do a startupping, you have to put together a clear customer segment, a clear value proposition, an answer to the problem of the customer. You have to assemble the channel to bring this value proposition to the customer, and you have to convince him or her. And then you need someone that helps you build this value proposition. You need resources, industrial processes, partners. When you have assembled all these, you can start selling, and of course you will start also spending. When you have a clear idea about all these blocks works together, you can start thinking about the solution. And this is another concept that can be interesting for startups. It's about a minimum viable product. This is a concept that is clear for everybody that wants to build something from scratch, but it's something that is not clear in an established organization, in a company, in a corporation, in a small business. The idea is this one. You have to build a new product. You don't start specifying each single components and building up the product. You have to go by iterative, convergent approximation. If you want to build something that gives you mobility, you start with a skateboard and you go with a trike, a bicycle, motor bicycle, and at the end you build the car. It's a concept that is fundamental. You build by iteration. To do this job well, you need to go to the essential. I hope that this picture gives you what is essential. This, by the way, has been given to me by an EUROAVIAN alumni a few years ago. So it's really something that passed through EUROAVIANs. This is a picture that shows you how good was Picasso, the painter, in going to the essential. If you see this, and this is how he painted a bull, and at the end he came up with just 6 lines. It's incredible. It's a bull. Everybody recognize it. He went down to the core. This is very important if you want to do this exercise. Understanding which is the core. When you have the product, you have to sell it. Selling is a tough job because you have to define a price. You have to be used to bargain. Now, I cannot give you a lesson about bargaining, but I want to invite you to read a book that is by Chris Voss. Chris Voss was an FBI officer who was in charge of anti-kidnapping. Whenever there was a situation like bank robbers having hostages in a bank or something like that, he was there to negotiate the freedom of these hostages. He teaches a lot about going back home with the full glass. Now, you have to take into account that there are a lot of forces that influence your business. You have to start to think about competition, about norm, regulation, about suppliers, competing products, swinging customer, technological trends, fashion, a lot of things. You have to think strategically. Further message for this evening is you are not alone. You are not alone. When you think about innovation, you have to compete. Where do you compete? You compete in a community. I invite you to think about selling an innovation not to a market, but to a community. Why to a community? Because relationship is the most important thing if you want to do business. And this is why I decided to volunteer for this evening, to show you that having a relationship that cross borders within a community of friends is the best way to do business. You may have a local community and you can play perfectly in a local city, in a local situation. You can have broad community like an industry, supply chain. The important thing is that the people within that community recognize you for a role. So if you want to build a business, you have to build something that provides benefits for the community you are in, and the community shall recognize this role. Let's move a little bit further. How do you find the first client and then ramp up? Another concept is that whenever you find the first client, then you have a gap. There is a moment that you stop continuing your growth because you end the early adopters and you start to sell to the real market, to the whole community, to the general public. If you want to target this general public, you have to find a niche within that community and become the champion of that niche. This gives you a position where you can always refer the rest of the market to and tell them, I am the king of that niche. It's a big incentive to prove the viability of your solution because there are a lot of resistances. Actually, in my lifetime, I also worked as project manager. I also worked as a business process engineer, and I collected 13 resistances. I brought you this chart not to tell you about resistances, but to tell you that there are at least 13 ways clients tells you no, I don't want your innovation. I don't accept your innovation. I will not adopt your innovation. And most of them are psychological. They are not a real reason. So it's better that you are prepared to answer all these resistances. So to overcome resistances, you have to build an engagement. You have to learn how to get the customer, keep the customer, grow the customer. My most important message here is that to make this run, to get more customer and keep selling, the most important thing is our referrals. Our referrals come from the people you know, your clients, your peers, your friends. So one thing that makes your sales progress are referrals, keep in mind. You have to build a communication. No, you have to be able to tell why, tell your story. Now, because you are engineers, male engineers, probably you undervalue the meaning of colors. This, of course, is not true for the side of this audience. But for the male side of this audience, it's good to know that each color and the way you color your story brings a lot of meaning. I love this chart because it gives a clear idea of all these basic colors means and how they are applied in for different brands. They are part of our reality, and male engineers tend to neglect them. Engineers tend to neglect is storytelling. Storytelling is a powerful and the first way about how to connect with people. I think is important for engineers that tend to sell based on the evidence, on value, on price, on discounts. It's important to understand that you sell to the emotional part of your brain, and that the way humans activate that emotional part since 2 million years are storytelling, stories. So learn to tell a story. I want to take this chance to give you a few rules about PowerPoint. First rule, don't take these PowerPoints as a reference. The idea was not to produce the perfect PowerPoint for this evening, but because I've seen so many disgusting PowerPoints produced by engineers in my life, I have seen throw out of the window because of incredible poor presentation. I want to give you this chart to tell you how to make a PowerPoint slide. Give one only message and 3 bullets. That's all. Please don't put electronic diagram or a cross-section of an airplane with bullet and explanation unless it's necessary, and be sure that you have given with this chart just one message. Think what you want to say to your audience, and that's all. The final conclusion is that if you want to build a startup, you must talk. I found that this chart 2 years ago is a summary of all the steps. So one thing that is important to start a startup is living the future. What does it mean? This in practice is look closely, search for exception, the strange things, the things that don't match, the outlier, the things that don't compute. If you look for something of that kind, you start to see God. You start to see God because the things that don't compute means that there is room for improvement. So living the future means spot what not work, the strange things, the black swan. If you find it, try to understand what is missing, write it down, make a prototype, show the prototype to 100 people. This is important. Show your prototype. Start to build strange things. Talk with people. Nobody will steal your idea because the problem, I will show you in a moment, is not the idea. Iterate, find someone to talk with, and then start looking for funding, launch your idea, get the first 1,000 users, restart, and go and build your success. Okay, this is the how to build a startup. What it takes to build a startup. What are the key ingredients? These are the top 5 factors that venture capital identified as a success factor, searching more than 200 companies. The first success factor is timing. What does it mean? Well, it means that you may have the greatest idea in the world, but if the market is not ready to grab it, it's not worth it. You cannot go with laser weapon in the Stone Age. People will not buy it. The other important thing is that if the timing is right, your window of opportunity is narrow. You have to jump in full speed. Let's talk about the idea, your fantastic idea. It works, is important, but it's not in the first place. The way you build your business model, customer, supply chain, marketing, and so on, still is not much important. Money is less important. One thing that is important is the team execution. But why? Well, I can tell you that your team and your execution is the only thing that is in your control. Timing do not depend by you. You can just jump in. The idea comes if you are lucky, but you cannot plan the idea. Business model depends by all the strategic forces around you, the competition. Funding, probably if you're a startup, you don't have the money. So it don't depends by you. The only things that depend on you is team execution, your organization and the way you do things. I want to give you a few tools that you can use every day, even now. The first tool is the Eisenhower matrix. So learn to delegate, understand what is important, what is urgent, and treat it accordingly. Understand what are the key variables that make the big chunk of the value you are going to build using the Pareto laws, and then try to understand when to do things, avoiding to jump into impossible tasks and doing things that are possible. These 3 tools can guide any project you can start. And about starting a project, I want to give you just a glimpse of how in USA works finding the money for your startup. You start with an idea, with a co-founder, and then the first money comes always from family and friends because they are the only one that trust you. Then you can try to find a seed round. people that are like angel investor or venture capitalists that give you a little of money just to try to prove your concept is okay. And then you have the first real money coming in, the round of money that bring heavy lift. Then if you are in the USA and you build a unicorn, you go for an IPO. The point is, all these steps from funding to success requires a lot of money, and there is a point where you cannot survive without the injection of money coming from other guys. Innovate is another association I'm in, no profit. It's in Milan. It's made by former engineers and a lot of professionals that are passionate about innovation and support the acceleration of startups for free. If you have a good idea, please tap in with Innovates. You may start acceleration program next January. So if you have a good idea, next January, there is a window of opportunity. The last message I want to give this evening is this one. 85% of your financial success, the money that you will get in your life, is due to your personality, communicate, negotiate, lead. Only 15% is due to your technical knowledge. You are engineers, so this is shocking, I know, but start thinking about it. That's all. I'm open for your question, and I hope you like it.
Thank you, Flavio, for your presentation. If anyone has any question, there should be the button to raise your hand to input questions. But first, I think we can start from the questions that were submitted before tonight's presentation. The first question for you can be, we often hear that abroad skills really matter, while in Italy, references are the most important thing. According to your experience, is this true or false?
It's true. It's true. It's true. Or better, it's partially true. The real point is that being introduced is important everywhere. So do not expect to get a job, to get funding for your startup because of your skill. Nobody cares of your skill if you are not known and you are not trusted by other people. So yes, it's true. It's even worse than that. The worse than that is that in Italy, competencies are it's not the problem that are not important, that they are very low paid. While if you are abroad, the competencies, technical skills are paid. But this has nothing to do with the ability for you to find a job. You get a job if you are in a network. You are selling yourself, find a community. Next.
I think everyone's a bit shy tonight. Actually, we can maybe talk a bit about EUROAVIA, because we've been asked to ask you, what is your current activity for the EUROAVIA Association?
Okay, as I told you, I started immediately after I graduated to think to an alumni association, and it took me almost 20 years to build a LinkedIn group with 500 EUROAVIans on LinkedIn. It's called EUROAVIA Former Member. Through this activity, finally, I was able to spark this fire about alumni association in Moritz Young, German guy that made this officially happen. So now we have an alumni association. It's made mainly by people much younger than me, so much closer to your age than mine. And my role is just to be an auditor for the activity and to bring a bit of experience and enthusiasm. But the EUROAVIA alumni is really something that is building up in these years. And it's something that I expect all of you to be in and leverage for your career, for your life, for many years.
Being in EUROAVIA helped you in your career path to arrive where you are today?
I didn't arrive anywhere. I am a small consultant that I enjoy what he does. But first of all, loaded me with a lot of ammunition in my first years, because I arrived in the job with an understanding of different cultures, with an understanding of the world that my peers had not. At that time, I was really the only Italian traveling Europe. So I met with 50 guys, and they came from Germany, France, Belgium, UK, Sweden, Israel, France, And I was the only Italian for most of that time. I really had to understand the cultural differences, and this has always helped me during my professional life. It still helps me because as a consultant, I know I can tap into friends whenever I need to get in touch with someone or get a piece of information that is missing in my consulting jobs. It has been something that has always been very fundamental. My only regret is that I was not able to leverage even more.
We've got one question from Ricardo. Ricardo,
do you think that knowing different languages except English can be good for our future? So, for example, French or German.
Well, starting from the point that talking English is mandatory. Okay, I come from an experience of 3 years in Dubai and 2 years in UK, and I've seen a lot of Italians being fired because they were not able to communicate properly in English. So I cannot stress enough the importance of a fluent English. If you don't have a fluent English, you are cut off. Then, because we are European and the market of reference for us is Euro, I will recommend you to study French or German. My experience is that if you want a career that is rewarding for what you know, the French and German market are the ones that are the best suited to make you grow and pay for your skills. Both of these countries require full command of the language. And while French you can learn on the spot in a few months, German is tough, but I recommend to study. Choose one, possibly.
Thank you.
Hi, my question is, if you want to innovate in a certain field, do you think that the great innovation come to the people working in that field or from people that are other fields, maybe know something about that? Because my impression is that if I want to innovate something, I first to know it really, really in a good way and then innovate?
It's a tough question. I think that the real point is not the best innovation comes from outside or inside a field of competencies. For me, the best innovation is the one that brings you more money. Say that, I don't think that you can innovate without knowing everything about a topic. Because I have supported several startups and I have seen several fail. The one that fail is because they are ill-equipped to build up something. So the more you are equipped, the more you can accomplish. About innovation is the mental attitude, not about the amount of things that you can learn. You never stop learning. So start learning as much as possible. The more you know, the more you can bring this innovation on the ground.
Thank you.
I've seen Jazz's hand.
I just wanted to ask, right, with respect to starting up something new. Usually when you bringing something new to a market or you want to innovate for yourself, you tend to deal a lot with your friends or colleagues who you have immediately around you. But I've always heard this saying that you don't mix friends and business. With respect to your experience, have you seen it gotten with people who tend to start businesses with their friends or tend to work very closely with friends?
I've seen a couple of married persons doing business together. I don't recommend because you talk business every day in your family. Making a startup is so tough that unavoidably brings tension, and you don't want to bring this tension on the dinner table. So I absolutely don't recommend. Among friends, if the two roles are clear, no problem. Of course, we put a challenge to the friendship. My recommendation is to be a bit formal at the beginning so that you have a ground of discussion that is not just friendship, but is a piece of paper, a piece of rules. I don't think there is any better way to start a business than with a friend. As I told you, I believe that to build a business to serve a community, and a person that is not in your family and belongs to your community is a friend.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for the presentation, first of all. I was thinking when you have an idea, the first step, since one of the first steps is to see if there is a market for your idea. But I was thinking that, for example, if you want to develop a product for an everyday use, maybe it's easier to grasp if there is a market for it or not. But like in the space sector, how do you understand if there is a market for your idea or not? Thank you.
Let's put in this way, what is market? The point is to sell to the aerospace business, you must reach a client that is in that space. Elon Musk said, I think there is a good spot and so on and so forth, but actually he made SpaceX with a lot of NASA money, and he was able to get in touch and check if those people was interested in his ideas. So the end is always the same. You don't start with an idea. You start with a client, and a client is someone that belongs to a community where you can have a role. So check for the client before. No client, no party.
Okay, thanks. Thank you very much.
Flavio, I'm Elena. I just wanted to tell you thanks for your presentation. I really liked it. And I wanted to, well, this is not actually a question, a true question, but I wanted to tell you that I really enjoyed the slide with your pictures of the EUROAVIA event. It was so beautiful. I mean, anemia of 1990, it's insane. I really liked it. Thank you very much for this, to share it with us.
Happy to hear this. It was the most important part of this evening.
Yes, it was truly beautiful. Thank you again for your for having shared your experience even in EUROAVIA with us.
I don't see any more questions, so I think we can end our evening together. So thank you again, Flavio, for your presentation and useful insights on startupping. Also, I thank all of our members and members from other associations of EUROAVIA for being here with us. And for those of you who are most interested in space, I remind you our next seminar on the 17th of November, where we will talk about space debris, the orbiting, and we will conduct a virtual visit of MPC's SpaceMind, which is an industry dedicated to the development of small satellite solutions. I think this concludes our evening. Thank you again, Flavio.
Thank you, guys. Enjoy.